Oh, hello. It's me, John, the occasional truck man. This isn't a goof. This is part 2 of my 2-part advice series on how to get your CDL. In part 1, we looked at how to get your CDL for free by using tuition assistance programs from the United States government. Don't watch this part unless you've already watched the first part and actually done your research into those grant programs. A free CDL is almost always better than one that you have to pay for, so seriously, if you haven't done so already, do some Google searches, make some phone calls, and while you're at it, think about doing a different job where you get to have a life and stuff, you know? I don't know. But if you're still here and you still want to be a trucker after watching all my other content, and you ruled out every possible way to get your CDL for free with grant money, then it's time to make an important decision. Should you go to CDL school on your own dime, or should you get your CDL through a trucking company? Option 1, school. There's 2 types of schools. There's standalone trucking schools that just train people to drive trucks, and there's community colleges and vocational schools that offer CDL training as part of an assortment of different job training programs. Now, it's important to look at both types, but for our purposes, I'll be talking about these 2 options interchangeably. They both have one thing in common. Once you graduate and get your CDL, you get to pick where you want to work. Schools usually have recruiting partnerships with a handful of companies, but you're not limited to just that handful. I'm not saying every trucking company hires brand new CDL holders, but the ones that do will be competing to hire you. Once you graduate, you'll be feeling like the Bachelorette from the popular TV show The Bachelorette, and some of your suitors might even reimburse your tuition. To pick a good trucking company, you'll need to do some research. Look for one that has a terminal close to your house so that you can be sure to get home sort of regularly, and, so you'll have a shorter commute time. Also, look into what you'll be paid during training. Keep in mind that a lot of companies that hire new CDL holders will still put them through what's called a finishing program. Basically, you'll still have to spend a few weeks or even a few months out on the road with a trainer before you can live in a truck all by yourself. The disadvantage of going to a school is that if you don't qualify for a grant, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. Most CDL training courses cost between $3,000 and $6,000. Some have the option to pay in installments. You can also pay using a loan or with one of your kidneys. It's important to shop around when choosing a school though. You don't want to spend too much on training because you don't even know if you like trucking yet. Spoiler alert, you probably won't like it that much. In addition to price, you should also ask potential trucking schools what kind of scheduling options they have, how much one-on-one instruction you'll get, how much driving time you'll get, and whether or not they do their own CDL testing. It's a lot better if they have their own state-certified examiner right there on site, because if you have to schedule a road test through the DMV, you might wind up waiting weeks or even months for an appointment, especially if you don't pass the test on your first try. And on the other hand, there's option 2, company training. This is what I did. It's fast, it's furious, and it's maybe not the best choice, but it's still worth looking into. What kind of training companies are in your area? How large are the loans that you'd be taking on? What is the timeline for paying those loans back? And what happens if you leave the company before they're paid off? Company training is usually faster, and it can sometimes even be cheaper depending on what else is available in your area. But you better pick your training company very carefully, because if you wind up hating it and quitting, you'll still be on the hook for that loan. I actually know 2 people who went to company training programs, signed off on the contract, quickly discovered that they hated the company and then quit. And then went to a different company training program where they had to take on another contract and another round of debt before they could ever actually start trucking. Obviously, I don't recommend doing that. Ideally, you shouldn't have to pay to get your CDL at all, let alone multiple times. Also, keep in mind that company training can leave you with significant knowledge gaps. Companies really have no incentive to teach you anything beyond the bare minimum that you need to know to operate their specific set of equipment. This applies to all kinds of little details about how different kinds of trucks and trailers operate, but it's most important when it comes to automatic versus manual transmissions. Most big companies run all automatic trucks these days, but if you take the CDL test in an automatic, You're gonna have a restriction on your license, and you won't be able to drive a manual until you get retrained and retake the entire CDL test. Having this restriction does slightly diminish the number of trucking jobs that you'll qualify for. Also, boomers will make fun of you. And one more thing about company training. It's basically a weeks-long job interview. Even though you sign that contract saying you'll pay them a bunch of money, they aren't actually under any obligation to give you a job at the end of it. You aren't even guaranteed to get your CDL. This actually happened to somebody that I went to school with. He went through the whole program, signed off on the contract, but he didn't wind up getting a job at the company, and he didn't even get his CDL. Can I please get some F's in the chat for this guy? Here's a tip. Trucking companies actually care a lot about your temperament. There's a lot of emotions that can come up during the 65 hours a week that you're going to be spending rolling up and down the highway. It's arguably the hardest part of the job, and companies want people who can handle that. If you're getting frustrated easily, slamming the shifter around, swearing a lot, that sets off huge alarm bells because it shows that you're letting your emotions affect your driving. Honestly, I think some company training programs are designed to stress you out, just so they can see how you react. Company training can be absolutely grueling, but don't let it get to you. Think of it as part of the job interview. Regardless of whether you go through company training or a school program, the real training happens in the truck. Your first 12 months of truck driving is absolutely crucial because it will open the door to better wages and working conditions. Don't screw it up. With 1 year of safe driving under your belt, tons of new trucking jobs will open up to you, and with 2 or 3 years, you can get a job at pretty much any trucking company in the country. Also, every single sponsored post on your Facebook feed will become a recruiting ad from one of those trucking companies. Bonus tips. 1. If you plan on being a company driver for a long time, you should try to get in at a unionized company as soon as you can. Now, full disclosure, I've never worked at a union company, but if being part of a union is something that interests you, the best time to start is at the very beginning of your career so that you can start accruing seniority right away. It's easier to switch from union to non-union than it is to go the other way around. From what I've heard, the first year or two at a union job can be kind of rough because you might be getting the routes that nobody else wants and you might not be making as much money. But your first year as a truck driver is probably going to be kind of rough regardless. And over the long term, a union job can give you a better work-life balance, outstanding benefits, and even a pension, all of which can be almost impossible to come by elsewhere in the industry. 2. Do not sign a lease purchase contract as a brand new driver. Seriously, the turnover rate for truck drivers is absurdly high. Just getting a CDL is expensive enough. Don't take on even more debt to do a job that you don't even know if you hate yet. A lot of companies love to push shady lease purchase agreements onto brand new drivers because it helps the companies dodge massive maintenance expenses and liabilities. If you want to go the owner-operator route later on, after you've built up some experience and some cash reserves, then great, go for it. But I really don't think you should be starting a trucking company without any trucking experience, you know? It just doesn't seem like a smart business decision. 3, keep your CDL clean. Know your limits, don't do anything unsafe or illegal, even if your boss wants you to, because a clean record is so much more important than any one job or load plan or appointment time. When you're out on the road, the only person who's responsible for your truck is you. 4, have an exit strategy. I know it sounds silly, but unless you're a really special kind of person, you probably don't want to spend the next 45 years of your life driving a truck. And even if you did, Silicon Valley's trying really hard to replace you with a robot. Trucking can put a lot of money in your savings account relatively quickly, but what do you want to do with it? Get into real estate? Go to law school? Start a business? I don't know, but you should try to figure that out sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you might end up living in a van down by the river. Or by the pond in this case. Last but not least, are you sure you want to do this? Seriously, there's other jobs out there. In most trucking jobs, especially the entry-level ones, you'll be spending 65 hours a week, every week, racing up and down the interstate, and if you're lucky, you'll get 1 day off. Let's check in with past John and see how his day off is going. I'm spending it right here, in my truck, parked in this parking lot. I am straight up not having a good time. Thanks, John. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for watching this video, but please remember this is all just my opinions. I was only a trucker for a little over 3 years, which in trucking terms means that I'm just a tiny little baby. My core competency is editing myself into stock photos that I found on the internet. So if you've got advice for new truckers, leave a comment. Tell us what you know. It's probably more than I do. If you like where you work, leave a comment and let me know how I can also work there in like a year or two when I run out of money. And if you want more trucking advice, don't ask me. Check out some other trucking channels, look at the trucking forums, read the comments. I don't know, get out there and live a little. All right, that's all I got. I'll have some more goofs for you soon. Good luck, be careful, love you, bye.